who will join us on Saturday. We will also have a film crew that has been with us making a video, and they will make some of the video available of the eradication available by our next press conference, which, by the way, we will not hold until Monday, which is the next day that staff will be available to speak with the press. Watch for details and be sure to sign up for our press releases if you have not already done so you'll know when that next press conference is exactly, where we will talk about the eradication. Also, the property owner is willing to entertain interviews with the press. If you are interested in interviewing the property owner, please email me directly and I will forward your request to the property owner. They will then respond to you directly if they choose to speak with you. One last reminder to please keep your line muted to ensure the best sound quality for everyone. Sven, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right. Can you hear me then, Carla?
Yep, I can hear you and I can see you. Thanks, Sven.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like the maid service started vacuuming next door just now, so of course. Alrighty, so basically on October 21st, one of our live traps that we hung, and actually it's kind of a new style that we had tried out earlier in the year and then kind of went away from. We made some modifications and hung a second one. It's called a unitrap. This was found to have 2 live hornets in it on the afternoon of October 21st. So we got the team together and assembled again to try another tracking attempt, this time using a different technology that we were fortunate to have loaned to us by the USDA from their Otis laboratory. Upon arriving at the scene on the 22nd, a nearby trap, one that was right next to it actually, which was not designed to catch them live, had 2 live hornets swimming around in it as well. So we had 4 live hornets to play with. We decided to rescue them. And it was actually one of the 2 that was swimming around in the dead trap that actually ended up making it back to its nest eventually. So we had tag to begin with, but the hornet did not revive. This was one of the ones from the live trap. So we cut the tag off and put it on the one of the hornets that we had captured live that morning. She flew off. With that, she also did quite a bit of flying, but then landed right near where we had released her and stayed there for quite some time until she chewed her tag off. So we took off again, not actually in the direction of the nest itself that we eventually found. And so we followed it for a little while until we lost the signal. We came back, did another circle of the area, relocated the signal, and we were able to follow the signal from where she was released through a heavily wooded area. Once we arrived at the area where the signal was the loudest, we asked everybody involved just kind of to stay back because it was a very strong signal. I actually heard a hornet buzz over my head, so we assumed she had left the location. But then we heard another one buzz over my head, and I took a step back and realized we were actually standing right under the nest. We had, in fact, tracked her straight back to where she came from. Saying there is a possibility that this is just an occupied space where they have maybe robbed a honeybee nest, but that is unlikely. We're confirming that today because we obviously will want to track them back to their real nest if this is the nest, and we will be attempting eradication at 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And so we appreciate you letting the crew get their rest tonight and being ready for the assault tomorrow. Obviously, this was of these overall are known to nest in hollow tree cavities, and that's exactly what's going on here. And so, of course, we lucked out and we got one that's kind of on the low end of the percentage scale there. We were totally anticipating it to be a ground nest, but as plan and just alter our plan of attack just a little, we obviously need scaffolding if we're going to reach a tree cavity. So we were able to get a hold of all of that stuff today, and we'll be able to get there tomorrow morning and attempt the eradication. The plan is to still use vacuum extraction, only in this instance, instead of using a pop tent over top of a hole in the ground. The plan is to still use vacuum extraction, only in this instance, instead of using a pop tent over top of a hole in the ground, wrapping it so that we can control the release of hornets from the nest. And this will allow us to do the vacuum extraction in a little bit more controlled environment. We believe we're ready to go with this, and hope to talk to everybody on Monday with a successful eradication. Carla, is there anything else I need to mention other than just one last thank you to the USDA for loaning us their radio tags? They worked out very well and used the signal really at all. So worked out very well. Carla.
No, I think you covered it, Sven. So now Sven will take questions from the press. As usual, we ask you to either use the raise your hand function to indicate that you have a question, or you can also enter questions in the chat function using the chat function. I will unmute your line to help control the noise issues that we sometimes get. So if you raise your hand, I will unmute you and call on you to let you know you can ask your question. You can put your hand down when your question is answered, and or you can always put those questions in the chat box. I do have a couple of people helping me monitor the chat box. So if I miss your question, I'm sure we'll circle back to it, or at the very end, if I've still missed your question, please enter it again and we will get to it. So let's start with Jose. I'm going to unmute your line, Jose, and you can ask Sven your question.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for holding this press conference and answering our questions. Just a couple. It's a two-part question. One, how do you know how effective this is going to be? Will this be effective in eradicating the giant hornet? I mean, now that we have found a nest here in the U.S., does that mean that there's other nests here in the U.S.? And the other question is not related to this, but the devices used to track the USDA devices you're speaking of that you use to track the bees. How do you place these devices on the bees and ensure that they're stuck to them, essentially?
Okay, so first question is, what does this mean for eradication of Asian giant hornet from the U.S. and also North America? Remember, our Canadian friends are dealing with this as well. Basically, what this means is we do have traps now that we know catch hornets. We are continuing to improve those. We now seem to have a live trap that's a little more effective as well, which means we can trap them where they're found. We can attach radio tags to them and follow them back to their nest. And so even if we don't nests this year, we have demonstrated that it is possible to do so. We can get live hornets so we can follow them back. And that really gives us a great tool in an overall eradication program. Second part of that is we learned from our first tagging attempt that messing around with glue sometimes is a little risky because it doesn't always dry as fast as you'd want it. So we have taken to tying or basically gluing dental floss to the transponders and then just fairly well. We did have one of the hornets get a hold of the string and chew it off, but the fact of the matter is we had 4 to play with, so we weren't too upset about that. And we may look at different kinds of string going into next year. I understand our British colleagues use Kevlar thread. that's how we're affixing the tags.
Great. And I will mention, we do have some photos of attaching that is linked in the press release that's online. I did have questions about whether we had some video. There's not video of that available today. However, there is some video from a previous tagging attempt with a different radio tag that it's exactly the same process. In fact, somebody asked me if they were new photos because they look exactly the same, except for the radio tag is different. So there's that little bit. I'm going to go with Hannah. You have your hand raised, but I also saw that you put a question in the chat box, but I'm going to unmute your line in case you wanted to ask it.
Thank you so much, Carla. Hi, this is Hannah Weinberger with Crosscut. Congratulations. I have a question about barriers to successful removal. Have you utilized the foam and saran wrap removal method with other species before that made you feel that was the right way to go? And what might possible barriers be apart from that tomorrow?
Actually, we've drawn into a very fortunate situation because it's literally on the edge of somebody's lawn. So it is an edge tree on the forest. And so at least for staging and getting back and forth and having have an excellent situation. The barrier is that it's 8 foot up in the tree. And so we're going to be working on scaffolding, which we were able to get a hold of some on very short notice, and we'll be assembling that probably right after this press conference and moving things into position for using the foam and saran wrap to block the hole just because it is up in the tree. We figured the best thing to do, because obviously we viewed several nest removal attempts that have been done overseas, and we have a pretty good idea of what we don't want to do. One of the things we do want to do is definitely obstruct the hole so that no more can get out. And that'll allow us to work on our terms, sort of. In theory, our suits should give us plenty of protection until we can complete the eradication. But we also have CO2 fire extinguishers as a backup. This is what our Canadian counterparts use, and it does knock them right out of the air. And we also have a pesticide as a backup, but we're hoping to not even have to open that up. So the vacuum extraction is used pretty frequently by other professionals who do yellow jacket collection. And we've already tested this, and it seems to suck up dead bodies at least very easily. And so with them being forced into a small area, we should be able to vacuum out the entire nest and keep them trapped in our collection canister without very much of them escaping at all.
Great. I'm going to take one or two from the chat box here. Have there been any reported hive attacks this fall?
No, not this fall. We, of course, had 2 or 3 reported last year, and right before the conference, I got off the phone with a gentleman who's reporting one from 10 years ago, so we have to investigate that. Back and forth from this nest for quite a bit, and none of them seem to be carrying any pupae from a honeybee hive, either leaving the nest or coming to it. So we don't believe these guys are in slaughter phase right now, or at least they haven't found a nest to harvest right now. Reports were around October 21st from 2019. So October 21st or 22nd on, starting in 2019. So we should really just start to hear about that now.
Natalie, I'm going to go.
Thank you. 2 questions for you. First, can you just remind us of what's at stake here, the economic burden, the environmental consequences that this insect brings about? And then also, can you talk a little bit about the gear that you're going to need to wear to do this? It's not a typical beekeeper suit, right?
Sure. Okay. So the first thing, obviously, our apiary industry is the key industry that's at risk here. These particular invasive insects are known to be voracious predators of honeybees, particularly managed honeybees, where only a few Asian giant hornets can take out 30,000 healthy honeybees in just a matter of a few hours. And unfortunately, the managed honeybees we use here have no natural defense against them that's effective at all. And so stopping this cold is very crucial because, as everybody knows, managed pollination is a very key component of our agricultural commodities and the systems that we have in place to grow food here in the U.S. And so a very important fight, one that obviously we've never given up on from day one, but we'll continue to follow this through until we either win or we have to get to a point where we need to start different management. But obviously a very good sign today that we can locate and kill a nest. Now, when we go out there to kill a nest, there are a number of suits available on the foreign market. One that we chose is basically, it kind of looks like a white spacesuit, if you will. It does have a fan in the roof, which sometimes catches my hair when we turn it on, but it does keep you nice and ventilated. Has a face shield because these hornets are known to spray venom, and that can actually cause debilitating eye injuries that can be permanent. So we have to keep our faces covered. They have very thick rubber gloves and rubber boots attached right to it. But the key feature here is that it's a very thick suit made of very light foam. And so it's not too cumbersome to wear. I wouldn't say by any stretch of the imagination that it's comfortable. We have worn them on a very hot night earlier this year, and you can get a little warm in them, but we seem to be able to function pretty well. Our movement wasn't too restricted. But the key feature, of course, is the thickness, because the stinger of an Asian giant hornet can be up to 6 millimeters in length. Ours are actually slightly thicker than that. So they will be stinging the suits, and hopefully they will not go all the way through. I guess we'll find out tomorrow morning whether or not they really work.
Thanks. Another question from the chat box from, I'm not sure which one is from. Are you aiming to vacuum live hornets to eradicate? Can you offer clarity on that process?
Okay, sure. So the process, again, is we seal up the entrance, and then we create a small opening that we can put our vacuum fixture into. And this will actually, as they come out to try to stop us from entering, we'll be vacuuming them into a chamber. This chamber is actually going to be removed to a cooler that has dry ice in it. And the reason we're doing this is we do need a number of specimens for research purposes. And there are different projects going on with other labs actually all across the country, and with some other folks in other countries as well. And so this is to determine not just the origin of it, but if we have nests related to the ones we had last year, some other things that we're going to be able to find out from this, and of course to figure out the genome as well. And the other portion of this is eventually we're going to have to drop the tree to extract the brood. And we want to do that for a couple of reasons. We need to know if they had already started producing breeding cast, or if breeding cast had already hatched out and left the nest. And that'll tell us if this particular nest produced new queens for next year that have already left the nest. And this is why we're kind of not waiting for a week or two. We're getting to that point of the season where once we know we have one, we should shut it down immediately. So that's one of the other reasons we're doing that. And hopefully that clarifies your questions a little.
Jim, I am unmuting your line so you can ask your question.
Thanks. Do you have any idea on how many more nests there might be up there in Whatcom County?
Sure. So we obviously had a few captures earlier in the year in the Birch Bay area, and then nothing since. And so we don't know exactly what that means. We've made some improvements in our live trapping, and we'll be swapping those out within the week down there. But certainly there's something going on down there. And we also trapped an Asian giant hornet a few miles back towards Blaine, so a little closer to the Puget Sound. And that's far enough away from this nest that we suspect this one is from a different nest. And, there's an a very good possibility that there's more than just this nest in the area we're working right now. We're going to keep the traps up through the end of November. That should tell us a little more. The traps in this vicinity should stop operating with new live captures within the week, we hope. And that will tell us a little more. In general, 200 or 300 queens are going to come out of any given nest. We have a little bit of evidence that suggests one nest went all the way through last year, and we're dealing with the offspring from that nest. So there's a good chance that there's definitely more than just this one.
Thanks, Ben. Going to a couple of questions. There was one question that asked how high up in the tree it is. I know you answered that, but perhaps they logged in too late.
8 feet up, approximately. It's between 7 and 8 feet.
Great. And Ryan, I am unmuting your line so that you can ask your question.
No problem. Thanks. KUOW here, radio reporter. I'm looking for some sound. Can you do the sound of a nest of Asian hornets for me?
No, I can tell you what it sounded like buzzing over. I mean, it's just, I mean, you notice them. I believe the film crew that was with us did record the nest, though, to some degree. And maybe Carla can help you out with that.
One more quick one. Of all the various threats to honeybees in the area, from, I don't know, climate change, pesticides, other pests, where do you rank the hornet?
The hornet's a very serious threat, although we haven't recorded an attack this year, and we've only located one nest. We already have reports of hives being attacked and killed, and to me, that's serious enough. Because in theory, we don't have a massive population of Asian giant hornets out there, but the very few that we have that showed up last year managed to attack and kill, 6 or 7 hives. And so to me, if we end up getting a lot of Asian giant hornets, it could get pretty serious. Best not to find out, though. We just try to take care of them now.
Question, I believe, from Don Jenkins. Were the USDA tags developed specifically for Asian giant hornets?
No, these nano tags have been used on many different projects. They've been used for tracking bats, I think. They've also been used for tracking other types of insects. The particular set that we had are leftover. These leftover. There's not a huge shelf life on these, and so they would have expired by the next field season. So as soon as they wrapped their stuff up, they shipped them out here and made them available for us, and I couldn't be more thankful. We've also purchased essentially the same thing, operates at a different radio frequency, and we just got those in last week as well. This one was up and running, so this is the one we ended up using. We'll be refining the ones that we have as well, so we can put those into service in the coming weeks or next season as well. But just very happy to have them, and proven technology that's been around for a while, actually.
Question from the Seattle Times. Thanks so much for doing this. Is the goal to extract the hornets alive or dead?
We're going to extract them alive, basically use their behavior against them. They'll be very aggressive and come pouring out of the hole. And the easiest thing for us to do to get them and make sure we've killed them is to just simply collect them in a chamber, and that's what the vacuum helps us to do. The other options that are available, pesticides, for example, can sometimes take some time, and you're not really ever sure if you've killed the entire nest before you go to extract the nest. And so this is a method that has been used by a lot of folks who, collect yellow jackets and other things like that for venom purposes. And, having observed them doing this, this is what we landed on as probably being the best route to go.
Nicole, I didn't do Nicole, right? Nicole, I'm unmuting your line. I don't think that you've had a chance to ask your question yet.
Yes, it was sort of already addressed, but during the last press conference, you thought that there might be 2 other nests in downtown Blaine and near Birch Bay, if I remember right. What's the status on those? Are you any closer to locating them?
No, you're right. I did go over this, but we'll recap it. In Birch Bay, we got a few hits earlier on. It was actually back in July. We deployed live traps just like we have up in this other area, and just we've received no more detections since then. And the traps, but no new movement on there. There was also one collected over by Custer. That one was a male, I believe, and so we're not really sure what that means. He could have just been straying far from the one in Birch Bay, but we deployed live traps around there 2 weeks ago. We do not believe this is related to any of the other captures, so we managed to get a live trap array up there last week, and we'll be monitoring that one closely as well. And we'll follow all of them through until it either snows or, we find a nest. But that's the status on those. No new news.
Is there any evidence that the hornets have traveled further south or east into Washington than the Blaine area?
Not yet. We had a really excellent citizen scientist effort, and also we had our own trapping efforts, and those by some of our cooperating agencies and other organizations. And they're using the same exact traps and lures that we're using, and they have not picked any up, so that's a very good sign. We've received some reports in we can't explain away, but there have been no photographs or specimens associated with those, so it's pretty hard to redirect resources. But it's areas we added extra traps, of course, and then we'll be watching all those areas pretty closely as well. But for now, it looks like we're still pretty concentrated in the Whatcom County area.
Okay, Elise, I'm going to unmute your line so you can ask your question.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for doing this again. I just wanted to know, at what point would you consider the hornets have established themselves in the state and the region?
If we have consecutive years of positive finds, and by consecutive, I mean, last year we couldn't really count. I mean, it was December before we even had a specimen. So this year we definitely found one. Next year we would have to say that they're here. But it's still a very small population. They're in a new land, and we're actively hunting them. So there's still a good chance we'll be on top of it. But if we're 5 years out here, and I'm still telling you this, but from 6 different counties, we probably have a real problem. You should be cautiously optimistic that we're still only talking about Whatcom County at this point, though.
Okay, there is a question asking about how many hornets can live in a nest.
Anywhere between a couple hundred up to 700 or 800. It really varies depending upon the climate, the nest location that they chose. The one we're dealing with, we can actually sort of see it via heat signature through the tree with our thermal cameras, and it does not appear to be huge. And so we're guessing we're looking at, maybe 100-200 specimens we're going to be pulling out of there tomorrow. And of course, we've already, trapped quite a few of them in the local vicinity there. So, they're in a kind of a confined space, so they really didn't have room to grow huge. But I have seen some photographs of some that are, 2-3 feet across and several layers deep, containing, 700-800 specimens. But I do not believe that's what we're dealing with here tomorrow. It's quite a bit smaller from the heat signature we saw.
Okay, Nicole, I'm going to unmute your line so you can ask your question. Nicole Nazaro.
Hi, thanks so much. You mentioned that the hornets can spray venom, and I'm sure the public would love to know how to protect themselves if they see a hornet, because that may not be something that they're associating in their minds with normal bee or hornet behavior. What should a member of the public do, aside from obviously calling you, to keep themselves safe? And are there any particular extra risks for people who happen to be allergic to honeybee venom?
Well, it's a different kind of venom than honeybee venom. So most people are going to experience severe pain if they're stung by one of these. If you happen to be allergic to this type of venom, then you're going to be, generally speaking though, you're not going to be encountering these. So the general public does not need to be worried about hornets coming out of the air and spraying them. Where you would get into trouble is if you were trying to handle it like we do, and or you were right up in the nest and poking your head in there, they may actually squirt venom at you. Basically speaking, the documented records that we've read have to do with people doing nest removals and not having proper face protection on. I'm going to be willing to bet that most of the public wants nothing to do with participating in a nest removal, so most people are going to be just fine. We would highly recommend, though, that nobody attempts this without proper gear, and certainly if you're going to be doing this, you do need to have some sort of eye covering on.
Next question, do Africanized honeybees or killer bees stand a chance?
No idea. The two are not together, so it's really unknown whether or not they can handle them or not. I might defer that to Chris a little later and come back with an answer next time we. It's, as far as I know, nobody's really.
Next question, do you know if there's only the one hole in the tree, the one that was shown in the video? How can you be sure there isn't another escape hole?
Excellent question, and it's part of what kept us up last night. So our entomologist, Chris Looney, has been sitting out in the rain all day, observing the nest, trying to find that and some other answers out for us before we make our attempt tomorrow. It is known in the literature that sometimes when they nest in trees that they will actually have a tunnel going down and have a subterranean nest down below. That, however, usually is only about 60 centimeters in length, and so we're talking 8 feet up. The heat signature, of course, is also in a localized area, and it does not appear that they're coming and going from anywhere else, but he's basically been observing the nest all day, looking for this very thing. And as a precaution, we're going to be, after we secure the main entrance, we're going to be wrapping the rest of the tree to obstruct any other entrances that we may find. And again, we'll have some protective gear on, so we'll probably be mostly okay. And in theory, we should be able to contain most of the nest inside of the tree before we start our removal.
Right, just trying to go through here. There's a question, how large is the nest? I think that you've kind of covered that, but maybe talk about that again.
Sure. So the tree is approximately 20 inches in diameter, and it's contained within the tree. It does not appear to be much more than, at least the photograph I saw on the heat camera, maybe ball in this case. That appears to be what's putting off a heat signature, so we won't really know the true size of this until we drop the tree after we've killed the nest and, take a look at the nest and the brood structure.
Right. I think that I have gotten all of the questions in the chat. If I missed your question, please retype that in there. And I also believe I've gotten everyone who had their hand raised. So I think we're getting toward the end here, Sven.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Just give it one more minute to see if anybody pipes in with any other questions. And of course, my computer went all the way to the top again. My shoes. Yeah, that looks like it's it. So I'd like to thank everyone once again for joining us for our Asian Giant Hornet virtual press conference. Again, thank you so much to the public that has been so supportive and all of the press who have really helped get this story out there. As always, information is available on our website at agr.wa.gov/hornets. And we look forward to seeing you again on Monday with more information about how our eradication efforts go tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone.